Okay, in this assignment we're going to do some drawing. We're going to make a two-dimensional math grid. But before we do that, we'll go over some basic concepts. So we're going to do this in slides or presentation file in Google Classroom, or excuse me, Google Drive. And so let me make this a little bit wider here. And over here. And to get a new slide, a shortcut way to do that is just type in slides.new. If you hit enter, that should give you an untitled presentation. We're doing a two-dimensional math grid, so I'm going to type 2D math grid. Okay, let's say name your file. We don't need any themes in here, so we're going to close that panel. And we're not using any text boxes here in the beginning, so I'm going to close this and close that. To delete these, you got to click on the outside border. Just don't click inside here. You got to click right on the border, then hit backspace or delete. Here's just some words that are going to help me as I work through the first drawing that we'll do, which will be a stop sign, so you don't need to write any of this. So to make a stop sign, we're going to start with a circle, and that's going to be under the shape tool right here. You can see shapes as an option, and an oval tool will help us make a circle. So we select that. Draw out an oval like this, and I want you to know that this is a selection. This is the selection tool right here. If I click off of the object, it's no longer selected. If I move my mouse over it and click, it becomes selected. These are handles that allow me to move it and reshape it. Most objects that you draw have two properties you need to think about, and that is the fill color and the stroke color on the outside. Right now it defaults to a gray fill and a black outline. Notice as I deselect this menu right here changes. If I click on it, I get a whole nother set of stuff, okay? To change the fill color, it's this guy right here, the paint bucket. I could change the circle to be blue. The outside color is controlled here. Right next to it is the border weight. Right now it's just 1 pixel wide. If I said 8, it would be that big. And I can just show you a little bit better if I use a contrasting color. Well, we actually want a perfect circle to do a traffic light, so what I'm going to do is select this and delete it. If you ever do something like, oh, I didn't mean to delete that, you want to go back in time, that is Command-Z on a Macintosh or Control-Z on a different machine. And I can go back in time. To go forward in time, it's add the Shift key and then do Command or Control-Z Shift, and you'll go forward in time. All right, to make a circle that's perfect, you want to hold down the Shift key while you draw out the circle. This will only allow you to now draw out a perfect shape. I'll make it just a little bit bigger. To resize it and keep it perfect, hold down the Shift key and grab one of the handles and it will remain a perfect circle. In this case, I don't want an outline, so I'm going to select the circle, go to the stroke property, and say make that transparent. Now I need it to be red. So I'm going to either you could use a solid color, or if you prefer, you could go to gradient and choose a red from there. Well, now I want to do another circle, a yellow one, and I want it to be the same size, so I'm going to leverage copy paste. But that is kind of big. I'm going to do 3 circles, and so I'm kind of running out of room. I'm going to resize just a little bit before I copy paste the next one. So now copy and then hit paste. Control V and then Control C and then Control V. What's nice about this software is that when you paste in a copy, it comes over 2 arrow keys to the right and 2 arrow keys down. In fact, if I went up 2 arrows and to the left 2 arrows, I'm right on top of the other object. Now I'll move it down about halfway here, and I'm going to change it to yellow. Now, this was made second, and that's why it's on top. The most recent thing that you make will always be on top. Well, say for some reason you wanted this to be behind the red circle, you can do that. That is under a range menu, and it's called order. And if I said excuse me, if I say send to backward, it would go back one layer. So if I had like 10 circles, it would only go back one layer. If I wanted to go back all the way, I would say send to back, and then it would be behind everything else. So I'm going to lower this down here. Notice there's guidelines to kind of help me. That red means I'm right directly underneath it. And now I need a green one. And I'll move this down here, or maybe I'll just put it up here for a second. And I changed that to green. Again, since it was made last, it's on top. And just so you know, if I ever wanted that to be behind everything, arrange, order, send to back. Okay. And if I have something way in the back that I want brought to the front, I can select that and do the opposite and say orders, bring to front, and it'll come to the front. All right, we're trying to make a stoplight, so I'm going to go ahead and use these guidelines. Now you notice as I pull down, it also is measuring the distance between the circles, and it's saying, hey, they're equal now. So if I let up, I now have they're equally spaced, and they should be lined up. Let's see, they're now lined up. Now, on my stoplight, I need to have a black box that kind of holds all this together, and I'll need to send that to the back once I make it. So I come over here to shapes, and I want to grab a rectangle. And I want to draw a black box around the 3 traffic lights like this. Of course, when I let up, it's in the front of everything, and I can send it to the back using arrange. Send to back. Okay. So I'm going to take the transparent or the border out, and then I'm going to fill it with black. Okay, I have something like this. Now, say I want to move this whole thing and maybe make it smaller. And, you know, right now, if I try to select more than one thing, I can't. It doesn't let me. Well, I need to select all of these. There's several ways to do it. Here's one. I can take the selection tool, and as long as I drag an imaginary rectangle over all 4 objects, some part of them, I'll grab all 4. Okay? So then they would all become selected. So again, I come here, and now I can move it all as one object, right? Well, there's still 4 separate things, and I want it to act as one thing. So that's called grouping. So you select the items you want to group, and it's also under arrange, and you go to group, and there's only one option, group. When I select that, this is now all one object. I can move it, and it's all one thing, which is very handy. So now I want to resize this and maintain its proportion. So I'll hold down the shift key while I do that, and I can make something like this. Quite often in drawing, you want to draw something big, it's easier, and then later you can shrink it down after you group it. Just so you know, there are times that you want to ungroup something. Say your teacher says, oh, I want this to be blue instead. Well, you can't change it right now. It's all one object. We can't really change that one thing. So you have to ungroup it. So while it's selected, I can go to arrange, and now ungroup's an option. Now, if I click off it, click back on, now I've got just that one thing, and I could turn it blue or whatever the teacher wanted. So it's called ungrouping, all right? I'm going to undo that and make it grouped again. So now I just need a little pole, and the way I did that is I took a rectangle tool and drew it below here and move it up just a bit, and it needs to be black, so I fill it with black. And there's my pole. I don't want an outline on that, so I'll say, hey, get rid of that outline, make it transparent. And then lastly, on this little practice page here of going over some of the basics, I'm going to take an oval, and this will be like a little patch of grass. Of course, I need to send it to the back and give it an appropriate color. And so those are just some of the basic things I wanted you to be aware of. It'd be great if you could draw a traffic light just like that. Well, now on to the actual assignment. And so I'm adding a slide here, and this is going to be our 2-dimensional grid. Now, I have a saying in computer class in 6th grade that as your teacher, I can't make you smarter, but I can make you faster. And so hopefully some of these tricks will come into play for you that I show you in terms of trying to save some time and making something look professional. We're going to draw just a math grid paper, and then we'll put an XY axis on it, and then we'll try to place some points on it and label those. So we first start with the grid. So you go to the line tool, which is next to the shape tool. There's all sorts of lines, but we just want this one. Hold down the shift key and start about right here, and you want to draw across this page. Just something like this. Now it's selected. It's pretty thin and it's black. I want it a little bit thicker and I want it blue. So I'm going to come here to line weight and change that to maybe a 3 or a 4. I'll change it to 3. That's a little thicker. That's good. And I also want it to be blue, so I'll change it to that. And so I have one line. The deal is you want to use this copy of this line and just use it over and over again to make your grid. And you want to be very careful of making your lines equally distant from each other. So we copy and paste this. Again, when it got pasted, it was 2 to the right and 2 down. And if I go up 2 and over 2, I'm right where I started. This is a copy of the line right on top of the original. Go down 5 arrow keys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. You're now going to copy these 2 and place them down here, 5 arrow keys away from that line there. So I highlight these 2, copy paste. 2 to the left. Now if I go down 3, that'll line up those guys, those 2 lines. Now go down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I have 4 lines perfectly spaced, and they're all the same length. Now that I have 4 of them, I can copy paste that, 2 over, move this down until the last 2 lines line up like that, and then go down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need about 4 or 5 more lines, so I'll copy those. And 2 to the left and all the way down. If I end up with an extra one, I can always delete it later. So I come here and I could, at this point, just leave it right here. Now there's 2 right here, so I just delete one of them. And it looks like I'm pretty okay. Let me zoom out a second. Right over here, I can go to the zoom button, say 50%. Yeah, I don't think I need this line, this last one, so I'll get rid of that guy. And zoom in to fit again. So there are your horizontal lines. Now we need to do the vertical lines, the ones up and down. And so we're going to use the same thing. Now pay attention and watch the video. Stop and repeat it if you need to. I'm going to make a copy of all these lines and then turn them. Okay? So I highlight all these lines and I do copy paste. Don't touch anything. Make sure they all remain selected. This is the free rotate button. If you hold down the shift key and click on this rotate button, you can move it to 90 degrees. Hello, like that. And then I'm going to take my arrow keys while it's still selected and move these guys down until I see the top of them, like this, and then move them over. So like that. Now, if I zoom out a bit, you can see that these are very too long. So I can come here, zoom out to 50%, and I can take this handle and just pull it up to something like that. So if I zoom in now, looks like I need about 6 or 7 more of these, so I'll highlight these. Copy paste them up to and then over. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they're all equidistant. Looks like I need maybe 1 more. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's pretty good. I would take that. If you wanted to, I guess you could. If you wanted to, I suppose you could highlight just the vertical ones. And if you wanted to move them over a bit, you could. But you don't have to. So what's nice about this is the blank grid. And we can now put the XY coordinates on it. And begin to make our 2-dimensional math grid. So I need to make this line thicker and maybe this line thicker to show us the X and Y axis. Let's start with the X first. Just pick one that looks in the middle. It doesn't have to be exactly in the middle. So select that line. We need to make it thicker. Right now it's 3 pixels. Let's try 8. And that'll be our y-axis. Now remember, if you've looked at a math grid, this line has an arrow on either end. You can do that by selecting that line tool, and past its line weight, past the dashes that you can make the line have, are line start and line end. And in both cases, you just need to put an arrow on the end of each one. This will be our y-axis, our x-axis, and we'll label that in just a minute. The one that goes up and down is your y-axis, so pick one that looks like in the middle, like that. And we're going to change that one. Instead of going through the steps again and making it thicker and putting arrows on it, I can take the format of this and paste it onto this line. Okay, it's called the Format Painter. So click on this line that you formatted, and you go to this Paint Format tool. You click on that, and then you move your mouse over here, and with the selection tool, click on the line you want to have that format, and it will absorb that format. Okay. Placing points on a two-dimensional grid is based on the x and y axis. And so let's label those before we go any further. So I'm going to take the text box tool. I'm going to draw out a box. And if I type the letter X, it looks pretty small. And so I'm going to need to adjust these things. The first thing I want to tackle is, though, the alignment. Right now it's in the upper left like it's a paragraph. I actually want it to be right in the middle. There's 2 places you got to go to for that. While it's selected, come here, and you want this tool right here. And it has 2 rows, so you have to actually do it twice. This is the horizontal alignment. You want it centered, so you choose that one. Now I want the X to be up and down aligned, and that's the second row here. You want this one for middle. Now, it's hard to read the X, and so all these shapes, even the text box, has a fill. It's just set to be transparent. Same thing for the stroke. I do believe sometimes there's a box. But what we can do here is put in a slight fill, just so I can see what the heck I'm doing. Oh, that's much better. Now I'm going to highlight that X. I think I'll make it bold and italics. And it also needs to be a lot bigger. I'm going to say, let's see what 24 or 30 looks like. 30 looks good. So this is the x-axis, okay? So the first number in a point will be determined on the location of this line right here. And I'll talk more about that in a second. Well, we need to label the y-axis, so I clicked on the border of that label. And now I can move this over and change the X to a Y. And that's the line that goes straight up and down, the vertical line. Now, the next part of the assignment is I'd like you to place a point somewhere in here, and then to properly label that point. A two-dimensional coordinate system, right here, this is what's known as 0, 0, the origin. If I said put a point at 0, 0, it would go right here. Right. So I'm going to make a dot, and this will be what I'll represent a point with. And I'm going to start about here and just draw out that dot. If you hold down the Shift key and use the arrow keys, it'll move 1 pixel at a time, and you might find that to be helpful. And so here's my dot. I can zoom in and kind of see what I'm doing a little bit better. And on this dot, I just assume not have an outline, so it's more like that. And now that I'm zoomed way in, I can hold down the Shift key and just kind of do 1 or 2 of those and get it right where I want it to be. To zoom back out, I can just say fit. All right, where is this dot? Well, on the x-axis, well, if this is 0, 0, and you go on the x-axis here to the right, that's positive. This would be positive 1, positive 2, 3, 4 on the x-axis. On the y-axis, it's going up from 0, 0, so that's also a positive number, and it's positive 3. So the coordinates of this point is 4, 3, and we need to label that. So I'm going to take this label and copy paste it, and then take the outside of it and drag it over here. Make it a little bit smaller that way, and a little bit wider that way. This will not be in italics, so I'll remove that and remove the italics. The way you label a point is within a parenthesis system, and this is where your xy coordinates go. On the x, it's +4. On the y, it's +3. I need to make this a little bit wider. So this point right here, you can kind of move it up a bit and over, is, give it a different color so don't confuse it with the xy coordinates. So this is a point on this linear plane. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the x, 1, 2, 3 on the y, +y. For a completed assignment, I'd like you to then add 3 more points in each one of these quadrants. And I'll do one and show you how this works. So I already have a point and I already have a label, so just copy and paste those. So I'll copy and paste this, and I'll do one over here. I'll say I'll put it here. All right. Copy this, because I'll need to label it, and drag this guy over here. And you ask yourself, well, what are the coordinates at this point? Well, on the x, you're going left from the origin, so this is -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. So the x coordinate of this point is -5. The y coordinate is going up, so it's +1, 2, 3, 4. So this would be 5, 4. If you would, please put a point down here and label it, and put a point over here and label it, and that would be the assignment, and turn that in. Thanks.